I'm resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Joel Sage, joined by my buddy Gordon Dymowski, my buddy Patrick McCray. We're here to talk Dark Shadows, episode 706, which is a great episode. Narrated by Grayson Hall, written by Sam Hall, directed by Henry Kaplan. This is where Edith dies before being able to tell Edward the secret. I gotta ask you guys this: what did you think of the character of Edith Collins?
Hilarious, wonderful. I think just outstanding. Yeah, yeah. She's clever. She's got Quentin's number. Yeah. I mean, she's all that in a bag of chips. She's grandma mama, as Quentin called.
Yeah, she's kind of like, I think maybe the first the first Collins in 1795 to be a bit cynical and a bit like, yeah, I know there's some stuff going down, and yes, she's freaked out by the fact that I find it interesting that she's freaked out when she meets Barnabas and says, "You're the secret," but the first thing she doesn't do is she doesn't tell Edward, "Hey, you know that Barnabas guy? He's a secret. He's got pointy teeth. He's a vampire. Go stake him now."
He's strong enough for a man, but he's made for a woman. That's his secret, and the secret is out.
So Barnabas goes back to the old house. He tells Magda to move the coffin to make sure that it looks like nobody's been in the secret room in a mausoleum in 100 years. He tells her, go get Sandor and do all this now. Meanwhile, also while Edward's trying to find out the secret. Grandma's like going crazy. She's like so hysterical from seeing Barnabas, she can't think straight, which I love. Also, we get the introduction of Carl Collins, played by John Carlin, and when Barnabas comes back, Carl comes out of the secret panel, and in the drawing room, he puts a gun to Barnabas's head. Guys, what were your thoughts on that when you first saw it?
It's hilarious. It is really funny. Fred has gone through so much that day, and to have this on top of everything else is the quintessence of mirth. Yeah, I mean, it's funny stuff. Gordon, what do you think about it?
Well, I think it's interesting how with Carl, Carlin plays him as a very fearful character, but the jokiness is kind of his way of establishing power. So if you look at his portrayal, the only other role he's done is Willie Loomis, and Willie's a very fearful, kind of nervous character, but that gets expressed in his being, basically being pushed around by stronger personalities. You got Jason McGuire, you got Barnabas, and I think the fact that yes, Carl's pointing the gun at Barnabas's head, and you'd think, okay, Barnabas knows he's a vampire, he knows the bullet's not going to hit him, but he's actually smarter than Carl because he realizes even though he looks very nervous, he's like, okay, this dude's got a gun to my head. He's probably not thinking, oh, hey, and I'm a vampire. He's thinking more like, I can't reveal who I am. And I think Carl comes off as, when he's funny, but you want to punch that guy in the face because he's not lovable funny.
Yes,
he's that kind of practical joke stuff really hides like some really disturbing things, especially when. And what's interesting is that his conversation with Barnabas doesn't really lie. He just kind of barely tells the truth. Like at some point, Carl says, you won't tell anyone, will you? And I think Barnabas' reaction is, oh, we'll deal with that later or something like that. So I think he's one, you kind of realize that this guy, that Carl is, there's something wrong with this guy. And we don't know maybe it's just that he lived with Edward and Quentin for so long, and they're not exactly they're not exactly men of high moral character. So I think Carl has that kind of youngest child. I'm going to be a practical joker, but only because it's a very malevolent kind of humor. I'm not sure how else I can describe it.
Yeah. This is a situation where, all of these characters are coded because they couldn't call them gay. They would give them all of the cultural stereotype behaviors, but they wouldn't just use the G word. And so you had two types. You had the well-adjusted type like Paul Lynde or Dr. Bellows or, a figure like that who clearly had those Bulgarian tendencies. And Louis Edmonds, any character played by Louis Edmonds, they all had that quality. And then you had the closeted, repressed, self-hating, scary kind. And we're just talking about coded representatives. We're not talking about actual representatives. We're not talking about actual homosexuals. We're talking about how Hollywood took those stereotypes and played on either anxieties or tastes or aspirations or whatever. And the thing about Carl is that he comes off as someone with so much self-loathing over that, because he's got all sorts of feminine traits, but not the good kind, and so much self-loathing over it that that he really seems very, very threatening. And I think in a quiet, weird way. I mean, just like someone you don't want to wind up next to on a train for a long time. Because, and I'm not even speaking in a smutty or weird way, just bad things are going to happen. I'm just saying.
We also
not that I've been in that situation specifically. I know.
Well, it would be like being on this podcast for more than say 3 hours. Like hour 10 or 11, we're all going to be like, it's Lord of the Flies territory on Skype. Is all I'm saying.
Jewel, have you said
kill the pig, spill his blood?
I found some right about this whole crazy thing.
What's that?
I said, have your say about this, because you're in the wind-up, I can tell. And then I got some interesting things to share about all this.
Well, Carl figures out a way. He knows how to find out about the will or the secret. He goes to Magda, which I love how we've already established that Magda, being a gypsy, has the powers to read the cards, which I love that.
Yeah.
And you get that here in this episode. So, and I love the fact that it's so it's not just Quentin who goes to the gypsies, it's also Carl who goes to the gypsies. And we know that Edith loved the gypsies, and that's why they're living in the old house. So I love how Sam Hall really has established the characters of the gypsies and how they're being used in this arc so far. We know Magda's going to be an important role, and we all know by now what that role is. But when you're watching Dark Shadows for the first time, you're seeing a lot of establishment put into the characters of the gypsies, especially Magda, which I love. Go ahead.
As well you should. Well, you should. This was one of my favorite day books to write. Who picked this episode? Well, Julie, you picked a good one. May I share this with you?
I didn't pick
because
this one.
It's far more cogent. All right, well,
I think Jewel picked this one.
So
I didn't
good
pick this one.
Jewel picked this one. I didn't pick this one. Yeah, no, yeah. All right, here we go. This is trapped in 1897 via Chinese trance. Barnabas can't decide what's worse: being outed by a senile matriarch or being held at gunpoint by someone with a sense of humor. Barnabas, Jonathan Frid. Barnabas learns that Edith knows his identity as a vampire. The true family secret could get out at any moment as she utters the word mausoleum to all within earshot. He orders the mausoleum cleared before meeting Edward, Judith, and Quentin's brother Carl. The new Collins holds Barnabas at gunpoint with a trick pistol that ejects a flag that says fib. He insists that they'll be great friends. Soon, Edith dies while Edward swears to find out the secret anyway. Larry David fans take note. Dark Shadows is a prequel to Seinfeld. Seinfeld gone wrong. That's all I can think of when I watch 706. I had a friend who contended that you couldn't understand Seinfeld if you weren't from New York. Guess where she lived? Of course, she was wrong. To understand Seinfeld means to be one of two types of people, and geography is irrelevant. There are those who enforce the arbitrary rules of society, and there are those who, just to maintain sanity, have to bend, bob, and weave around those rules just to get through the day. The rest of society sees us as villains and weasels. In truth, we're just getting by as the loyal resistance. Barnabas is one of us. In fact, most of the more interesting characters on Dark Shadows are. We can't all be Edward Collins, as easy as his life of constant and furious umbrage would be. Here we have Barnabas on a mission to save a life, as noble as it gets. And yet, from day one in 1897, he leads, as the title of my autobiography will read, a life under siege. Rarely has he had a worse day than this one, and it gives him the chance to display his greatest power ever, the restraint he shows by not choking the living shisha out of Carl, Edward, and Magda. Yes, Angelique, Nicholas, and Adam tried his metal and soul to the ectoplasmic marrow. These are major existential crises. Compared to this unbroken chain of stubbed situational toes in 706, child's play. I mean, you show up. The matriarch goes nuts because, of course, she knows your secret. And like the third person you meet in all of Maine, and she knows your secret. Fortunately, she's oatmeal north of the eyebrows, except for blurting out mausoleum for all the world to hear. Great. You go deal with Magda. Simple request. Move a coffin a half mile or so. Little to ask in exchange for free rent. Of course, she's a jerk. But you don't have time to bite her. You finally sit down, and there's a gun to your head, wielded by some greasy dweeb in a brown velvet suit who looks like Willie. But it's all a gag. At this point, is any of it worth it? Yes, Barnabas would have survived the gunshot. Well, who's going to get the undead brains out of the carpet? I mean, before Edward minces downstairs. And what if Carl misses and puts a hole in Barnabas's only suit? Guys, I'm sorry, but we don't have time for this. I mean, really, Angelique didn't get Barnabas to lose it, but this chain of inconveniences and imbeciles is enough to drive anyone over the edge. He's landed in an I, Claudius episode in the Caligula arc. The interaction with Carl may be my favorite Frid moment in hundreds of episodes. In real life, he's an actor under unfathomable stress, cornered by psychotic, nymphomaniacal fans of all genders at every turn. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Opening the mail is an adventure. Gravestone cookies, passionately unwanted nudes. But he's a Canadian aristocrat with an upper lip so stiff you could cut linoleum on it. He can hold it together. Frid was clearly channeling his fragmenting politeness in how he indulged Carl. From beat to beat, his face is an encyclopedia of WTF moments. The culmination is when Carl needs to go, and Frid, Barnabas, tells him, "Don't let me stop you," with a deadpan delivery that makes Stephen Wright look like Jerry Lewis. Our hero suffers in Seinfeldian silence, with no Julia, nor Willie, nor Stokes to whom he can kvetch. Only on a day like this could the death of a Collins matriarch signal a happy end for B. Collins, Esquire. Mic drop.
Very good. Very, very, very good. What's you guys' favorite scene in this episode, Gordon?
I think the scene is probably not everyone's choice, but it's the scene where Barnabas comes in with Magda and he's telling her, go clean the mausoleum, and she's like just really like dismissive of it. It's like, oh yeah, sure, great master, what shall I do for you? Because the other pieces are very dramatic, but you can tell that Magda's just like, hey, I'm familiar with the supernatural. I don't care if you're a vampire. You know what? I have no more F's to give.
Patrick?
Yes.
What's your
favorite? The gunpoint scene. Fred's just very funny in that. I really like it.
With with Magda,
So-
my favorite episode, or sorry, favorite scene in this episode, is when she realizes that Edith is gone, and you could see she's sad by it. She actually did give a shit about Edith, and I love that because you're sort of wondering, okay, are the gypsies just conning everybody? Is everything just a con game to them? I mean, we've seen characters like Jason McGuire be con men. Are the gypsies just being con artists here? And it's like, no, not completely at all. Magda really did care about Edith, which I like.
Well, and they're cons.
Yeah, they are.
It's both.
Yeah, because part of what a con artist does is they insinuate themselves into a group, but they figure out who's the easiest to swindle.
Yeah.
And I think they probably looked at Edith, and Edith probably had their number long before Barnabas came along. So it's like, hey, look, I when it comes to like Edward's an idiot, Quentin's an idiot, Carl's a real idiot. I don't care about them, but don't come after me.
Yeah.
And don't mess with Judith either.
Yeah. What did you guys think about Carl?
I'm glad he's going to be dying in 70 some episodes. Sorry, Patrick, I missed what you said.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why he's the least seen of the Collins kids.
Yeah, he is.
And,
I mean, David Selby is just gonna be phenomenal in this whole thing. So, and Lewis, I think they write Carl's the he's the comic relief of 1897, and in horror, when you're comedy relief, sometimes you tend to get killed off.
Actually, I would argue that Magda and Sandor are the comic relief, and Carl is just there to be obnoxious. I mean, he's canon fodder at this point. It's like Carlin needed the money. Okay, we'll give you this Carl thing, and he goes with it with gusto. It's not a very casual performance. But I think the character is just set up where you can see he's going to meet and you can see that, yeah, he's probably not meant to be around that much. Or if he's there, he's meant to be a complication.
Yeah. Favorite John Carlin character, guys?
Willie Loomis.
Yeah, Willie.
Willie Loomis.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking that question, Jewel. I mean, what are you thinking?
Mine's Desmond.
Do I have to do a Bullwinkle reading? Huh? Do I have to do a Bullwinkle reading? Because I will read from this book.
Right.
I will. It's a good book. It's a good book. But if I have to use this,
it is. I understand.
No, the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound is a good book. I don't know about that book there, but
well, you should read it because it's a history of Jay Ward and Bill Scott, who created Bullwinkle.
Yeah,
it's available on here. In fact, if you'd like, I can actually read one paragraph.
Yeah.
Here's a sample, and it's one of the better paragraphs. 26 Aesop and Son scripts were commissioned in mid-July, just as Daily Variety officially announced. Rocky and His Friends has been renewed for 26 weeks by General Mills. Program shifts to Thursday and Sunday at 5:30 on ABC TV, replacing Lone Ranger in the Sunday slot. Show had the highest Nielsen rating last season of the daytime shows. Feeling more confident, Jay Ward began openly defying Johnson's orders. Now, don't you want to read more about Bullwinkle because of that paragraph?
Yes, absolutely.
Just no. I just want to know about Johnson's orders.
Is there anything you guys want to add about episode 706?
This is great. I had a long day. I think this was marvelous.
Yeah, wonderful episode.
Okay, let's see. I believe it's Gordon's turn to pick.
Okay, I'll make it simple. 812. 812.
Is tomorrow at 10 good for you guys, or?
Tomorrow at 10's good for me. Patrick?
Should be fine.
Okay. I'll
Should
see
be
you
good.
guys. Links to the Dark Shadows Daybook Unbound is going to be in the description box. Links to Gordon Dymowski's Amazon page is going to be in the description box. You guys have a great night. Take care.
Good night.
Thank you, Jewel.